ECSI fans, you want to revolutionize your sports investing habits? Allow me to tell you about WagerWire. WagerWire is an app that helps you become a superior bettor by allowing you to sync all your sports books and track all your bets in one place. See your current action, your betting history, and stats. You could also sign up for sports books and collect bonus offers. Follow them at WagerWire on X, as it's the best account on the platform. Head to App Store or Play Store now and search WagerWire and download the app.
2,000 years long, we will never settle. Hard days, no way, with a heavy metal. No time, no fail, won't stop here. Like a torch to a flame when it burns hot.
Good afternoon, sport fans from all around the globe. I am the host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and it's that time of the week. Mr. Scottie Webb, beam him up. Scottie Webb, MLB, Friday Night Lights, and a little day baseball at Wrigley Field. The headliner, Cubs with a REA of hope versus the Phillies, 2:21 pitch. Kind of funny, Wrigley Field. I think last Friday we had a day game at 2:20. I was in Albuquerque, New Mexico. The under-over was 11 and a half, and the under was breezing in, and I think there was 16 runs scored in the eighth inning, and the final score 13-11 versus Arizona. Under-over of 8, so it's kind of funny. Taijuan Walker versus Mr. Ray himself. First and foremost, a shout out to our proud sponsors and partnerships. It's WagerWire. Head on over to Google Play, download the app. It is free. Bucket, are you slow? Question mark. I have no idea what that means, so apologies. Threw me a curveball there, no pun intended there. Viva Tequila Seltzer. 6 flavors in all. The East Coast is cuckoo for coconut. And, of course, AtlantaSteaksAndSeafood.com. Introduce yourself to Terry Smith over at Facebook. And then come on back to AtlantaSteaksAndSeafood.com. Steaks, chops, seafood, appetizers, wine. 4 subscription packages. Set it and forget it. Mr. Smith will send you a month of protein. And that's all you need is a spare propane tank. So without further ado, Mr. Scottie Webb. What's up, champ?
Hey, what's going on there?
I don't know. We're getting ready for a monsoon. Now, we'll set the stage. I was in Albuquerque, New Mexico last weekend for a food truck festival. 85 on Wednesday, 80 on Thursday, 75 on Friday, and the day of the event, 36 degrees, sleet, snow, and rain for 10 hours, 75 degrees on Sunday. Here we go again. Now I'm back home on Cape Cod. Supposed to have a festival tomorrow. A couple inches of rain, Noah's Ark, so that's been postponed. Red Sox on the road, thank God. People are already asking questions. Are you slow? I guess that was me because we're a few minutes behind on the start. The Rock already wants to know, will there be runs in the first inning? Scotty, they're jumping in already. The question is, how are you doing today?
I am doing good. I've been taking my German Shepherd to go get some behavior training. Like he's good. It's just he's very reactionary to other dogs and other situations and stuff. So I've been working with him on stuff. But man, when I go over there to do this, I don't know if you know what no-see-ums are, but down here we have these things called no-see-ums. Basically, they're gnats, and you can't see them, so that's why they call them no-see-ums. Well, they bite you. And man, I got all these no-see-um bites and stuff all over me. I'm like just scratching and itching and stuff. But other than that, man, it's 90 degrees every day. It's sunny and beautiful, and it's Florida, brother. I mean, I got a pretty good tan going.
I want to do something before we dive into baseball, and I don't think I'm going to do this justice. We have partnered with WagerWire. They're our biggest sponsor. Travis, Zach, Guy, Amber Hawley, Ali. The list is ends of Matthew. And we do great work. If you haven't already, download the app WagerWire at Google Play. Follow along at wagerwire.com/graphs, calculators. They can give you up-to-date live on if you got a parlay ticket that's halfway through, if you got other tickets that you want to see what the true value is versus the cash out. Scotty, you won't believe this one, so I'm going to pull it up I'm going to see if I can do it justice here. Bear with me for 1 second. And I'm not going to be able to do this justice here. Let me see here if I can do this. This was a 15-legged parlay. And you know me, 15-legged parlays, they come 1 in a million times. And this was on WagerWire. And it was a bonus play. I'm going to read the exact so I can do it justice here. It was a $25 bonus bet. It was a 15-legged parlay. The owner of this ticket was 14 for 14 leading up to the final piece. Opening night, Florida Panthers money line at your Tampa Lightning, which they won, I think, 6-2 if I remembered. He sold 50% of it for $22.5, and he had a value left of, let me see here. He had a balance of about $153,000 left, and he was just trying to figure out how he can make sure he gets more money out of this. And the liquidity factor, what do I do at this point? I'm 14 for 14. I need something in my hand here. You don't get the 15 for 15. The better, it was a lottery ticket at $150,000. He doesn't have the 25 to 50,000 to execute the proper hedge, wants to lay some of it off to ensure, obviously, the 14 out of 15, sells half the ticket for plus 143 when the market was only plus 100. But as we know, there was a moral and a great congratulations at the end of this because the Panthers won anyways. So the 15 for 15, he made his 22.5. He sold off shares, and we move on to happily ever after. I guess I'm going to go to you here and say, Scottie Webb, how could you, 14 for 14, with just needing the Panthers in that one spot, how would you have approached this?
Well, I kind of like what he did there. I mean, in essence, he was able to not cost himself any outgoing money of his own to bring in money. So, I mean, he brought in $22,000, win or lose. So if he would have lost, he still made $22,000 on this ticket, as opposed to saying, I'm going to go bet on the Florida or the Tampa Bay, Tampa Bay Lightning or whatever to hedge against this ticket, to at least make some money, because he would have had to put up, I think they were minus 120 or minus 125 or something like that. So, he would have had to put up some pretty big money to even turn in the 22,000. So I don't mind what he did here. I don't think I would ever find myself in that position. I'm not doing 15-leg parlays. So it's not something I always think about. But just off the top of my head, I don't mind what he did there.
No, and again, it was congrats. These are called lottery tickets for a reason. I wanted to bring it up, prior to the final leg. He is 14 for 14. Panthers money line plus 100. The value of that ticket before was $76,828. He had already made 22.5. He wanted to make sure he could gain some more money with it. The easy thing was 25 to 50 on the other side of it. But not many of us don't have 25 or 50 large lying around to just walk to a casino. Never mind who's going to take a 25 or $50,000 because most of these places don't even have that much action on the other side, Scotty.
Well, just think about most of these bettors that do this kind of thing. I mean, somebody betting $20, $25, and it's a free bet anyway. It's not one of these scenarios where these guys have $30,000 in their accounts and they're betting $1,500 a game. Most of that stuff is fantasy land. You and I've talked behind the scenes a little bit. And most of the players that play sports wagering today, they're $20 bettors. They're guys that go out and they want to do parlays because they're $20 bettors. They want to turn $20 into 20,000 or 1,000 or whatever, and that's the fun that they have of doing this. So there's a lot of different ways to wager sports. I don't bet that way. I do a lot of work and spend a lot of time on, and then I bet bigger on games. Like baseball, I'll make, I don't know, 600 bets, 700 bets, or whatever. And, most of those bets are going to be between, $100 and $300 a bet. That doesn't kill my bankroll if I go crazy low. But at the same time, it does at the end of the year go and say, hey, if you had a pretty good year, you got a pretty nice little chunk.
We're at the month right now, baseball. We got a day game. We have people here. We got almost 100 people standing room only on Twitter. Before we break into it, because first pitch is at 2:20 here. Do you have any initial thoughts? Phillies at the Cubs. Overnight number, Cubs minus 130 with an 8 over. Now 155 with an 8 under minus 15 cents. Walker versus Ray. And there was one question on the Nerfy or Yurfy, if you had any intel on, you think there might be a run or two scored in the first inning.
Well, I like to look at the weather, especially in those games in Chicago. And in this particular spot, it's 12.5 miles an hour blowing in from left. So that's going to dampen my thoughts on a run being scored in the first inning, just because of the wind. But if you match up the pitchers, you want to sit here and go, well, Taijuan Walker, he's been terrible, right? Well, he's not been terrible this year, and every year's a little different. And I don't want to sit here and say that, these guys go through so much stuff in the off season that they get better. Some guys do, especially when they're younger. They develop and they go to drive line, they get some different, thoughts and different techniques and stuff, and they improve. It's been a weird phenomenon for me to see pitchers who you would think should be regressing in velocity actually increase in velocity as they get older. And the reason for that is they go to these specialized places and learn different things in the summer. But that's not what's going on with Walker. Now, Walker's stuff's been pretty good, but Walker's just getting healthy. He's been not healthy for about a year and a half. And last year he did what he could just to make it through the season. And his pitching arsenal stuff is he's a 92 on Stuff Plus and a 96 on Pitching Plus. So he's below average in terms of stuff, but his Pitching Plus is right at average. So that means he's being able to put the ball where he wants to, and he's controlling it pretty well. Colin Ray has been doing great, but stuff-wise, he's a 93 Stuff Plus and a 94 Pitching Plus. So he's below average in both. So that tells me a little bit that Colin Ray is he's done well, and this happens, right? You go out, you throw a couple games, you do pretty good. That gives you good feel, good momentum, and so forth. But he's going to get hit one of these days because the reality is Colin Ray is not going to be, he's not a Justin Steele that they lost. He's not that guy. He's not Imanaga. He's not, he's Colin Ray. And he's, a fifth and sixth long stretch guy, fill-in guy. That's what he is. So for him to go out and have a couple good starts, that's really good. The numbers, and I need to say this because I hear this a lot, and I don't know why. I've had VSiN on every once in a while the last week or so, and I hear these guys coming up and go, well, his expected ERA is such and such, and it's really good. And I go, in my head, I go, do you know what expected ERA is? How they calculate that number, where it comes from? Because I don't think most people do. I think they look at that number and they go, okay, well, Colin Ray's expected ERA today is 3.53, and Walker's is 3.76. That's what the numbers really are. That's his numbers. So where is that developed from? Well, xERA. Hey, Jay Barry, happy Friday. xERA is not a sabermetric number. It's a StatCast number. StatCast is based off of barrel rates, launch angles, exit velocities off the bat. So that's how they're calculating his earned run average expected is based off of those things. So I have a real hard time with StatCast metrics as being the godsend to what you're supposed to do. So there are two sabermetric numbers that I follow and do way more than I do StatCast. I have that number because I like to compare the number. So in this case, I like Sierra and I like XFIP. Okay, XFIP for Colin Ray is 2.70. Sierra is 2.73. So really good numbers. I mean, that's really good. Below 3 is awesome. And his xERA number is 3.53. So how does all that happen? Well, those numbers are derived from how many ground balls that are hit, hard hit rates for sure, how many guys are walked, how many guys are giving up home runs, how many strikeouts he has. So actual really pitching performance data, not barrel rates. So there's a different way to look at a lot of different things. And in this particular game, you do have a pretty big advantage for Colin Ray in those categories. So Sierra is 4.38, XFIP is 4.37 for Walker, and it's less than 3 for Colin Ray. So Colin Ray's been pitching really good. Now, you know how I do this, Jeff. I go back and I look at what they've done and how they've gone and what their game scores look like. Colin Ray has 2 game scores, 58-52. He's only made 2 starts. He's pitched a couple of times in long relief, and he's done well in those spots too. You can't tell me he's not due for a setback start. You can't, because he's not that great a pitcher. Now, at the same time, you go back and you go, hey, what's Walker done? Well, last time out was a 53. Time before that, 29, 55, 70. So he's been pretty decent. He's a average scores of 52 for the year. That's an average pitcher. These are 2 average pitchers that are actually pitching a little bit above average. However, when you start to think about how the handicap works, you got to start thinking about, okay, well, if they're not really going to go out and, the wind's blowing in from left field at, 12.5 miles an hour, makes home runs a little harder. But Colin Ray hasn't given up not one home run. So that's how FIP and XFIP are created. So FIP and XFIP have to do with home runs, walks, and strikeouts. That's it. Nothing more. Home runs, walks, and strikeouts. And XFIP is a precursor in a sense that it predicts your FIP is going up or going down based on your home run rate on fly balls. So it's basically saying, hey, the home runs, your fly ball rate's pretty high. You're going to give up more home runs. Your FIP number is going to go up. So if you haven't given up any home runs, and he's only walked 1 guy per 9 innings, so that's really good. The reality becomes is, how do you get on base? Well, you're going to have to get hits to get on base. So the Phillies and their offense is in a situation where They're scoring 5 runs a game, which is not bad. But it's this way with every team. You go down the list and you look at how they do on the road. They're 15% worse than an average offense on the road. So I would expect them to have a little bit of a fight and not do well right at the very beginning. I don't think they're going to jump out and go out and score 4 runs. So in answer to the Rock's questions about will there be runs in the first inning, I think both of these pitchers are good enough that they're going to be able to handle these teams and they're going to be able to handle the runs in the first inning. Now, as the game goes on and the second time they get seen and, as the lineups kind of move through, the Cubs have a pretty deep lineup. I think that's going to be hard for Walker to withstand. I don't mind all the steam that came in on the Cubs, but if you were going to bet the Cubs, you should have bet them this morning. You don't bet them now because you're getting a terrible line now than you did in the morning. I mean, and my other thought is you don't want to play them on the run line here just because the steam went up. If you have a reason to play them on the run line, then you should play them on the run line. But you can't play them on the run line without, kind of looking at the bullpens and all that. And I got to tell you, Phillies bullpen's terrible. So you could take advantage of that, see what it looks like if that's kind of your thought. I wrote down, my thought was Cubs first 5 minus a half a runs plus 100. I kind of looked at that and then decided I think Colin May's going to get hit. So at some point, I don't want to get caught up in that. So I don't think there's bad value there, but I would not play the run line unless I did it in the first 5.
Colin Ray, I call him Cy Ray because I would try to go against this guy more often than not last year, and boy, he was Cy Ray, and the times that I stayed away, he got lit up like a wood tick. So he is a tough nut to crack. And then on the other side, Taijuan Walker, we've been waiting for the real Taijuan Walker, and he's actually pitched well. So it is a tough game. And the hard part about it, Scotty, let's be realistic. It's Friday. It's payday for most people in the world today. There's day baseball, and I got to get a little something to get me to the draft and the afternoon card. So buyer beware. Great breakdown. Before I flip the switch, before we get into today's card, I got the MLB standings in front of me. 25, 26, 27 games in. Yankees 2-game lead over the Red Sox, 15-10 versus 14-13. Tigers a half-game lead over the Guardians, 15-10 and 14-10. The Seattle Mariners and Texas Rangers both at 14-11. Astros half-game back at 13-11. American League, anything stand out to you so far at about 25 to 27 games so far?
Well, I think one of the things that I do, I look at base runs, right? And let me the base run standings, and base runs is about sequencing of events. So if you had, let's just say we had 3 walks, 3 singles, and a home run. I shouldn't say it that way. Let's do. We had 3 strikeouts. Let's do 3 strikeouts because that's the 3 outs. And we'll do 3 hits, 3 singles, and a home run. And in those sequencing of events, one team had all 3 singles, hit a home run, and then they had 3 strikeouts, right? They got 4 runs. The other team hits a home run, gets 3 singles, and then has 3 strikeouts. They only get 1 run. So in the terms of that sequencing of events, one team was more favorable because of the sequencing of events than the other one. Base runs accounts for that. It looks at how teams do in those sequencing of events to say, hey, you were just unlucky in the sequencing of events you had, so you shouldn't be winning this many games because you've been favorable in those spots, and or you should have won those games and that you lost them because you're not being favorable, right? So there was a couple of things that stood out to me in the American League. One of them is the Cleveland Guardians. You remember last year we talked about they're the luckiest team in the world. They're the luckiest team in the world last year. Well, guess what? They have already to this point won 4 games more than they should have because of sequencing of events. So that's an interesting thought, because when you start to look at that division, that's a pretty tight division, and to me, that separates everything to sit there and you go, well, this is like Detroit, Minnesota, Kansas City. I still don't have Cleveland as being a team that's of any value, because yeah, they've won some games, but there's really 4 times they should have lost compared to other teams. So I think that's an interesting one. And the Angels are in that same spot. The Angels are -3. They should have lost 3 games, and that tells you how bad they really are. They're not good. They won 3 games they shouldn't have won. So that really separates them when you kind of look at the number and go, oh, they're kind of a 500-ish team. They're not. They're a well below 500 team. And then on the backside of that, you have only a few teams that are gaining because of some of that. The Yankees should have won 2 more games that they haven't because of sequencing of events. Boston Red Sox should have won 1. Here's the team that I think in the American League that's surprising a lot of people is the Baltimore Orioles. Look, I have the Baltimore Orioles to win 81.5 games now. I mean, that's a .503 winning percentage. That's right with the Tampa Bay Rays. I got the Rays at 81.4 wins. So they're a 500 team, not a playoff team, not a team that's going to go. Think about who they have pitching. They got a kid pitching today. He pitched last week. He got shelved. He pitched decent. He just got homered. And they're probably running into that same problem today. The issue that you run into in these divisions is, even though the Yankees lost Garrett Cole and, you know, they had problems with Schmidt and some of these guys coming up and going, they can score. And if you're the Baltimore Orioles, let me pull up. I don't have it in front of me that way, but I will in a second. Let's go over here. Let's go over here and quickly get what you're looking at. I wanted to show it to you this way. If you look at the standings and you look at the Baltimore Orioles, and in that division, only the Blue Jays have scored less runs. And then when you look at the pitching, they've given up the most. So how are you going to win if you don't score runs, outscore your opponent? Like, everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, most everybody can sit here and go, look, the Yankees, they're not a juggernaut team. They don't have the pitching to dominate a division, but they can score. Look how many runs they got, 137 runs. That's way more than what, you know, the Orioles have, but the Orioles are giving up 130. So there's a big difference between, you know, like where the Orioles are thought of and really what they are. You know, you're going to be counting on Gunnar Henderson to hit, 45 home runs and steal 60 bases, and then have, Jackson Holiday be somebody that he's not, and then be all these other kids that they have. They're good kids, don't get me wrong, but they're not the same. Adley Rutschman's a good player. He's a great player. But at the same time that you say all that stuff, it's their best player right now is the center fielder, Mullins. Okay, you're not going to win a division when center fielder Mullins is your guy. You know what I mean? It's not going to happen. Like if you sit there and go, I got to compare their best player to the Yankees' best player. He doesn't compare to Aaron Judge. I mean, it's hard to say that, but I mean, you know what I'm saying, right? It's even like if you put him against, like, who's the best player on the Red Sox right now? Bregman. If you put him against Bregman, he's not as good as Bregman. Those guys are tried and true and tested, and they're going to be there forever, and blah 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 blah. So this division is Yankees Red Sox. That's it. Yankees Red Sox. And I will say that I've been very surprised in that division about how well the Rays have actually held in, because they don't have an offense, but they look at them. The Rays give up the fewest runs, and they don't even have McClanahan back yet. They're going to pitch, and they're going to be hard to beat because they can pitch. So they're going to hang in right around that 500 number. I think Baltimore's going to hang in right around that 500 number. I guess my biggest question is going to be, what do the Blue Jays do? These metrics things, they like that team. I don't like them. I've got them as a 500 team, like maybe a little bit below 500 team, because they just don't hit. And what are they? They've got 88 runs, Jeff. 88 runs. They're playing the Red Sox, or they're playing the Yankees today, and the Yankees have 50 more runs scored than they do. And I get it. Carrasco's on the mound, but so's Barrios. So the Yankees might go score 6. Okay, well, you got to score 6 to beat the Yankees, and they can take Carrasco out and put their bullpen in and be halfway decent. So it makes it hard when one team can score all the runs. And you can see what's going on in the Central. The Central, you have the Tigers. They can score runs. Nobody else can score. Nobody else even has 100. They don't. And then the Tigers, they don't give up any runs either. So that's why the Tigers are where they are, and I don't think that's going to change.
Well, and I'll take that one a step further. The Tigers, who we know their front end pitching, who Skubal hasn't even started to be Cy Skubal yet, Flaherty, Mize, Job, they lead the division with a plus 30 run differential. Now here's the rest of the division: Guardians -5, Royals -15, Twins -18, White Sox -30 in run differential.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this about the White Sox: they're way more competitive this year than they were last year. I will say that. I don't think they're still gonna lose 100 games. That they might be 60 and 100, something like that. But at the same time that I say that, they're more competitive. I think they only won 40 something games last year, so they lost like 120 last year. So they're the worst team they ever played last year. So they're going to be better than that. But when you start to think about one of the teams that I think that is going to come that hasn't really done a whole lot is Minnesota. I think Minnesota's going to hit. I think they're going to score, and I think they're going to pitch a little bit. And I think they've gotten really good pitching. And Lopez had to miss a few starts. He's back tonight. So I think you're going to see Minnesota kind of climb that ladder a little bit. My opinion in this division, I think it's going to be Kansas City, Minnesota, or not Kansas City. I think it's going to be Detroit and Minnesota. Kansas City can't score. They don't have an offense. And they got really favorable results from, those pitchers they brought in last year with Waka and Lugo and, those guys and Lorenzen and those guys, right? Those guys may be average, maybe above average. Lugo's struggling. He's getting older. Lorenzen was an outfielder and a catcher that turned into a pitcher. And he's going to be an average pitcher. So if you got average pitchers and your only pitcher that you have is Reagan's, he better not lose. It was, can you hardly beat the Rockies? So, it's one of those spots where you sit there and go, what's going on with that team? Because they can't score. And then, the next one's down is the most interesting one for me, because I can't figure out what to make of the Mariners. I think they're good. And then you look at them and watch them play and you go, God damn, I hate watching that team play. They strike out all the time. They don't move runners. They play terrible. And then they somehow they just win games. But they can pitch, man. Every single day they can put somebody out there that can pitch. And they've got what's the name, Hancock in there right now. And that's because they're going to get another guy back in a little bit. The other kid, big strikeout kid. But when he comes back, man, that team's going to be hard to beat because they can pitch. And if they can just get some consistency in terms of guys on base, and I guess a great way to say this is the Seattle Mariners are the epitome of what Major League Baseball is today. Go look at their batting average. It sucks. They don't have, like, Arozarena's batting 200. And their superstar Rodriguez batting 200, but look how many RBIs they got. They got like 15 to 20 RBIs between them, because when they get an opportunity to score the runs, they hit a home run. They do whatever. They drive in the runs. Cal Raleigh, he's got a bunch of home runs and RBIs. So I'm trying to figure out how good they really are, because my numbers show them as the second best team in the American League. And my numbers say the Yankees are the best. And I don't think they're the great team. I think somebody could come up and beat the Yankees. The Yankees are Aaron Judge away from a disaster. You know, if Aaron Judge gets hurt, they're holy shit. So then who's the next best team? Well, my numbers say it's the Seattle Mariners. But I am really hoping that the Texas Rangers or somebody like that, because they have a deeper lineup. They have better, in my opinion, they have better players. They got guys that can pitch. And you know what? DeGrom hasn't pitched very well yet either. So, you know, maybe DeGrom's not going to be the DeGrom that he was. Or maybe it's the back half of this year or next year he's going to be the DeGrom that we used to know. And Scherzer, you know, he pitches for Toronto, and I don't know if he's ever going to pitch again. Who knows what's going on with these guys, man? You know, they're all old, and you know those guys they got to get the replacements, and some of those replacements are there. It's interesting when you look at what the projections, like steamer projections, you know, for the season, and if you look at pitchers, the top 10 pitchers are Paul Skeens, Garrett Crochet, Tariq Skubal, Zach Wheeler, Logan Webb, Logan Gilbert, Cole Reagans, Mackenzie Gore, Yamamoto, and Hunter Brown. Those stalwart guys aren't there hardly anymore. You know, that's kind of a new crew of people. And I kind of like that. That's kind of neat. You know, you don't have the DeGroms in there anymore. You don't have Verlander and Scherzer and those guys. They're not there. Nola's gone out of that list of characters. You know, so I think it's kind of interesting to see how the guard in that world is changing.
Monday, 10:30 a.m. Make sure you turn your notifications on. Myself and Scottie will be back to talk, obviously, the NL breakdown, because we could do another half hour just on that. I'm looking at the numbers and some crazy stats there. Got a full slate tonight. Must-watch TV at 10:10. Paul Skeens versus Yamamoto. Pittsburgh at the Dodgers right now. The Dodgers minus 200. You can get the Pirates at plus 178 and under over a 7, juiced under 15 cents. My Red Sox with Tanner Houck, who has not pitched well, versus Lively at the Guardians. Full slate. What I'm going to do, what we always do, Scottie, I'm going to pull you up to the front page here, give you about 10-15 minutes to break down what you have in pocket for tonight's games, okay?
Yeah, no worries. What I've got going on today is a list of ideas. I haven't actually bet any of these games yet, but it's kind of what I do is I'll start off with this is here's the data, then I analyze the data, and then I go, well, these are the list of ideas that I have, like that Chicago minus a half a run in the first 5 innings. I thought value-wise, it's plus 100. That's not terrible. Doesn't mean it's a great bet. So then I placed that on my list, and I go, okay, well, what about this one? What about this one? What about this one? And then I started organizing them, ended up with 2 or 3 or 4 bets. So I think that some of these things are interesting. I like Detroit today. That's one of my, I guess, more favorite spots. But I'm sort of half afraid to sit there and go, hey, you pound it, right? Because I don't think you should. I think that this is one of those spots where you got to be careful. Now, I say that because Casey Mize is in a position where he's made 4 starts, and 3 of those starts have been excellent. One of them wasn't, and it was not his last start. It was the start before that. So his setback happened. But I would expect him to pitch more average-ish today, not above average today. So that then sits there and puts you into a world of, okay, well, who's this young guy and how good is he? Well, stuff-wise, he's got a 97, and Casey Mize is 100. So Casey Mize is right at that, average to plus average number, and 97 is average to just a hair below. But when it comes to pitching plus, Young's really good. It's 105, and Casey Mize is 102. So in a lot of ways, you got an even matchup in terms of what kind of things come out of their hand, when they throw the ball. So it's about the same. So where do you get the advantage? Well, you get the advantage that Casey Mize has been there before. Casey Mize is drafted as one of the number one pick in baseball. So he's been around the block. He's got a lot more experience than what Young does. And that was very apparent when Young pitched his last time out. He threw a game score 31, gave up a lot of home runs, struggled with walks. Well, he might do the same thing tonight, have struggles with walks. There's nothing to sit here and say, that he won't. He is a ground ball pitcher. He had 53% ground balls in his first time out. Batting average against was 400. So, it wasn't getting anybody out. So then you have to kind of look at it and go, okay, well, if Mize throws an average game and this kid threw a 31 last time out, maybe he throws an average game today, what kind of offenses do we have to compare them to? And this is where I think people are lost on Baltimore, because you're going to sit there and go, Baltimore's awesome in offense. Well, Baltimore's scoring 3.2 runs a game. They rank 21st in offensive WAR out of 30 teams. They are minus 14% to a regular off, just to an average offense currently in the last 7 days. And against, they're good against right-handed pitchers, but on the road, they're 18% worse than an average offense. And currently they have 3 guys that are kind of pulling the weight, 4 guys who are bringing them down. So they're a -1 as a group, and the Tigers are a +1 as a group. So it's kind of average there, and not like a big advantage. But the big advantage is what Detroit does at home. Detroit is 26% better than an average team at home. They are currently 16th in offensive WAR. And the other thing that I thought was interesting in this game is that in the last 20 games, Detroit's 13-7, Baltimore's 8-12, which makes that a bad spot for them. And then Detroit has one of the best bullpens in baseball. So I like the idea that even if Casey Mize runs into some trouble, they're gritty. That team can hang in there. The last time I saw it, so it might have changed before the show. I get my numbers at Profit X. So Profit X is going to be a little different, but -111 with Casey Mize. I was happy with that number. I've got that number down as probably one of my better, looks for today. And I liked that particular one. I looked at, and again, home teams. I'm telling you, if you're not working on trying to find home teams, you need to be. Let me go back to my other thing about home teams. That was the run line. Let's go to the money line with home teams. You would think, run line, the away team, plus the 1.5. It's still not a good bet. It's terrible. Home teams are killing everybody right now. And if you look at home teams like Detroit at home, they're 10-3, and they are 5 + 6 units. Return on investment is 28.74. And Baltimore on the road, they are -4.2 units, -29.7 return on investment. It's just, you got to find a way to bet home teams. And this is a small edge. I like it. I think that you got a better pitcher. And I think people are just saying, yeah, Baltimore's offense. Well, Baltimore's offense isn't doing anything. Cedric Mullins is their best hitter right now. So I like that. The other one, to get back to my game numbers over here. Here we go. This is where I get a little bit. You got to be careful. This is the Houston against Kansas City game. This is Wesneski against Lugo, and I like to bet against the pitcher who's not doing so well. Lugo, his game scores. He's had 5 starts. His last time out was a 55, 29, 57, 59, 44. So he's not had a ace type start yet. Anything over 60, he's not had that. His last time was a 55, which was, kind of where he is. His average for the season is now 49. Over his last three is 47. That might be what he is. And in my opinion is that's probably what he is, because his numbers are showing that his strikeout rate is 6.3, which is in the bottom 25% of all of baseball. His walk rate is 3.3, so he's putting guys on base pretty high. And he's allowing 1.8 home runs a game. So that's in the worst 25% of baseball. So he's facing a guy in Wisniewski today who's had some bad luck losses. And his Sierra number is 2.9. His xFIP is 2.99. Strikeout rate 9.7, almost 10. And his walk rate is less than 2. So you're going to have to hit the ball to get on base against Wisniewski. And what do the Royals do? They don't hit. So I like the idea that this is going to be a competitive game. And my opinion is that, Houston at minus 110, it's not the greatest value in the world. Maybe you could get him more, if you could find him at more of a pick'em number, it'd be better. My number, I think, is 105, 110, right in that same area. So it's not like it's great big value here. But I like the idea that Houston is starting to turn things around on offense. They're 27% better than an average offense right now, and they rank 7th in offense. And I know you take out those 2 games that the Royals played yesterday against the Rockies, you can't. But if you did, they scored 12 runs yesterday, and in their last 6 games they scored 25. So that means they scored 13 runs in 3 games. They just don't score runs, and they don't hit. They're minus. So every team is really good at home in offense, except for the Royals. The Royals are minus 19% to an average offense at home. That's not a good way to win games. So I kind of like the idea here that Christian Walker was sat down for a day or two. He's come back and he started to hit, and he's starting to figure it out. The Astros are winning these games without Altuve and without Yordan Alvarez doing much. Well, those guys are going to start hitting, and when those guys start hitting in combination with the other guys that are hitting, I think they're going to really do some numbers. And I think Wisniewski's probably a pretty good shot tonight against a bad Royals team. So that was another one that was on my list to look at. I think this one's a kind of a stretch, but I wanted to bring it up just because I don't think people are paying attention to the Cardinals, and I don't like the Cardinals. Don't think I'm talking about them in a way that they're a good team, but not talking about Liberatore. Liberatore, he was a Tampa Bay Ray and was traded to them in part of that Randy Arozarena deal, I think, as a highly touted prospect pitcher who was going to be really good. And then they brought him up and made him pitch and do a lot of stuff. Didn't do well. Put him in the bullpen. He's kind of been beat up as a young kid. Well, maybe he's starting to figure it out. Maybe he's doing what he's supposed to be, because his numbers are his FIP number is 186. Okay, and that means that his walk rate is 0.72. He don't walk anybody. His home runs 0.36. So he's allowed maybe 1 home run all year. His strikeout rate is 8.64, which is average. But when you don't allow home runs, you don't allow walks, you got to get base hits. His batting average against is 108. People aren't hitting him. So his whip rate 0.64. It's hard to beat a guy that doesn't allow you to get on base. And I don't think people are talking about this guy as being a good pitcher. And he's facing Patrick in Milwaukee. Milwaukee struggles against left-handed pitching, and they struggle away from home. So Milwaukee's minus 22% against a left-handed pitcher. They are currently isolated power 29th out of 30 teams. Isolated power just means how many extra base hits they get, doubles, triples, home runs, that kind of stuff. Do they pound for power? How they score their runs? So they're going to have to string a whole bunch of hits together, get walks. to steal bases, do all that kind of stuff just to score a run. They're going to have to work their butt off. So I like the idea that the St. Louis Cardinals, they love to play at home. And let me get that number for you. Go back to home teams. The St. Louis Cardinals, go down to them. They're 8-4 at home. They're plus 3.5 units. Return on investment right now, if you bet on them, is 24.64 because people, they played the Phillies or a couple of teams and they were home dogs and they beat them. So this is one of those spots, I think, where it's minus 125. Again, there's not a lot of value there, but I think this is a good spot where, okay, you're looking for home teams. This is one of those home teams that they're probably going to win tonight, and that's kind of what you got to look for. I also was looking at, and I wanted to bring this out, and I'll bring out maybe one or two more. But this is Atlanta's game going to Arizona, and I think people are a little confused. I shouldn't say confused, wrong word. I think people look at Chris Sale and go, man, he doesn't have it anymore, and he's not doing well. Well, what if I told you that Chris Sale's strikeout rate is 12.34 per 9 innings? His FIP number is 3.79. His xFIP 3.28. His Sierra is 2.96. Those are top notch, top 25% of all baseball. So he's losing games for two reasons. The number one reason is WPA, win percent added. That means when he's in a spot where he needs to make an out, he's not getting it. They're getting home runs or they're getting base hits. The pending spots in these games, he's struggling to get that out. He's negative 0.86. Makes him hard to bet on. But they're facing Gallen today, who's a negative 0.59, same WPA category, and he's a 4.4, 4.17, 4.81. He's got worse metrics than Sale does. And when you start to go look at how these teams operate, look at how they do against left-handed pitching, because left-handed pitching is not very dominant anymore. There's far fewer of them than there used to be. And looking at offensively left-handed, Arizona is minus 13% against left-handed pitching. So that kind of bodes well for Sale. Now, I will say that the Atlanta loves to be at home. They don't like to be on the road very well. They're minus 13% on the road. No, 27% on the road. And it's just one of these spots, though, where you start to look at it and you go, offensive WAR rank, they rank 6th. Arizona's not hitting, they're 18th. I was afraid of that. When you lose the second baseman there, and you're required to then fill in and do some different things, and kind of lose an MVP kind of player. They got guys doing well. I mean, Carroll's playing pretty well and doing good. Perdomo's done well to step up, but it's really a tough spot for Arizona to keep going. Gallen, who used to be this guy that, man, you didn't bet him on the road, you bet him at home all the time. Well, currently, the way it works for him at home, Gallen, his SOPS plus. So that means what the opponent's on base plus slugging percentage is equalized to 100 is a 160. He's 60% worse than average at home. Now, guaranteed, it's only been 2 or 3 games. So the reality becomes is, can that be fixed? Sure. But I think it's a spot where if you're looking at Atlanta and you can get them at a smaller price and they're starting to hit, they're starting to turn things around. Atlanta in their last 20 games is 10-10. In their last 10 games is 6-4. So I think that's one of those spots where you got to be a little careful. If you can get good value, you can get good value there. But I'm looking at that LA game that Jeff was referring to today. And this is Skeens and Yamamoto. And so how often can you go and say the Pittsburgh Pirates are batting better than the Los Angeles Dodgers? How many times can you do that in a season or ever? Well, you can today, because offensively, if you look at those two teams, Pittsburgh right now is 4th in offensive WAR, and the Dodgers are 27th. Isolated power, the Dodgers still have them. They score their runs by hitting home runs. If they don't hit home runs, they don't score. And now they face Paul Skeens. So how many home runs are they going to hit? So they are 26% worse than an average offense right now. And the Pirates are 27% better than an average offense. In fact, if you break it down by how many players are offensive 1 WAR or better for the Pirates, they got 6. How many are negative? They got 0. So they got nobody dragging them down. 6 guys on the whole lineup of 9 guys. They're doing pretty well. The Dodgers have 0 guys. 0 guys with all those offensive stars they have right now at offensive WAR 1+ or more. They don't have anybody for the last 7 days. And they got 4 guys that are dragging them down. So this is a weird thing. So what that tells me is I'm not going to go bet the Pirates. It'd be kind of fun, especially if they won. But I think that what you do is you go and say, well, the Dodgers are struggling hitting. Yamamoto is one of the best pitchers in baseball. In fact, he's pitching better than Paul Skeens. So you have Skeens and Yamamoto. There ain't nobody going to score in this game. And then when you look at the bullpen shows Pittsburgh is decent and the Dodgers are good. So I think this could come down to, okay, this game is 3-2. Somebody scores, maybe make it 4-2 at the end, something like that. I think an under here is a pretty good spot. It's kind of cool to look at it. I just talked about Chris Sale has a 12.34 strikeout rate. Yamamoto is 12.75, so it's better. By just a smidge, but it's better. And Yamamoto has an xFIP number 1.65 and a Sierra 1.92. Guys, you don't get under 2s. Skeens is 2.59, 2.64. These guys aren't going to give up home runs much. They're not going to give up many hits. They're not going to walk guys. It's going to be a pitching, one of those kind of games. Under 7 is a pretty good number. And the last one I'm trying to figure out, because it makes no sense. Verlander and the Giants, and I get it that the record wise is pretty decent. But he's favored over Eovaldi. Eovaldi's a much, much better pitcher than Verlander is at this point. You're looking at 2.61 xFIP, 2.55 Sierra against 4.35, 4.35. So almost it's a 1.5 runs for sure, but it's closer to 2. Runs better, and batting average wise, he's given up 1.88 and whip rise 0.75. This is Eovaldi now, not allowing guys on base. And that's one of the problems with Verlander. Verlander's walking guys at 4.01 per 9 innings. So he's putting guys on base, and the batting average against is 260, 263. So his whip is 1.5. So Texas is going to get guys on base. And the Giants, when the Giants are hot and they're doing well, it's one of those things to bet on them then. But currently the Giants are 25th in offensive WAR. Isolated power is 27th. There's only 30 teams. And I'm not saying that the Rangers are a juggernaut, because they're not. But they have more opportunities to score tonight. They will. They'll have more opportunities to score. And the other thing will be is when you look at the bullpens, Texas's bullpen is a lot better than what you might have thought they were. They're showing WPA at 41, San Francisco 0.67, so about the same. And clutch rankings, they're actually better than where the Giants are, but they're all kind of in an average category. Nothing fantastic. But so I like Eovaldi. He in my world being the Prophet X, he's a plus 102. And I guess the only other thing I would suggest is I think Tampa Bay Baz is going to bounce back from his bad start that he had, and I think San Diego at home with King is going to pitch good, and I think that these two teams are struggling to score runs. So I think Tampa Bay and San Diego is probably a pretty good under.
Great job as always. Couple updates. Delay in Chicago with, I assume, rain. So I don't think you'll get the first pitch out. Now currently at 250 there. You brought up Texas. There was an overnight flip there. Texas was favored. Now San Fran. Corey Seager on the DL there, or IL, whatever we're calling it today. There. But a great breakdown as always, Scotty. We got your back, of course, Monday mornings around 10:30, give or take. But as we always wrap up this segment, tell them where they can find any work or, of course, questions, whatever.
Well, the best way to get me is just on Twitter these days. I shut down my website and other stuff. So just hunt me down on Twitter and ask me any questions that you want. I say that a lot, but I don't get a lot of questions. I get some questions through our show every once in a while. But and then the only other thing I'll say, because I'm on Mondays and Wednesdays, so shouldn't say that, Mondays and Fridays. So when I'm on and do these shows with you, we're starting new series. Monday's a new series, Friday's a new series for these teams. My research with AI world that I've been trying to delve into has shown one spot that is of merit and makes a lot of sense. Is and I didn't know it. I like those series trends. Like the carryover effect and all that stuff. We talked about some of that before. Where one team will come off a winning series on the road and they come home and they carry that over and they win their first game. That kind of thing. Well, what I didn't really know and found out in trying to develop some of those trends is that if you are the away team and you're going home, and it's the last game of your road trip, you're the underdog between, say, 110 and 180, plus 110, 180, you're 65% you're going to win that game. And I'm sitting there going, if I'm an underdog, it's and win 65% of those bets. And Jeff, yesterday is a perfect example. Even the pitching matchup. So you had Crochet on the mound yesterday against Hancock, right?
No, against Wu.
Oh, I'm sorry, against Wu. That's right. So where does Seattle play today? They're at home. And they were plus whatever they were plus yesterday. And so in researching this trend and researching this thing, it's hard to figure out exactly what it is that makes that happen. Maybe it's, okay, I'm all packed up, I'm ready to go. And the theory is these teams got nothing to lose. They're not having to go anywhere else. They have nothing on their mind. They got nothing but a clean slate of, let's get this game on. Let's play well. Let's have a flight home and have a good time. Make it home. Get in my bed. See my wife or my girlfriend or whatever. It's all positive stuff in that spot. And I think it's worth noting to track that, because I think that you'll find yourself making some money over the summer.
Well, we can't wait. Full slate again. 250 first pitch, hopefully from Wrigley Field. Full slate of baseball. Great matchups throughout the weekend. Kind of interesting you brought up Seattle. Crochet's been good and okay. Scooble's been good but okay. Now you find Seattle, last game of a road trip, decent Dogs win. They get to fly cross country and face the Miami Marlins. What a better situation, right?
Well, listen, you still got your standings up?
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to show you something about the Miami Marlins.
11-13 but a minus 21 in run differential.
Right. So where's the Marlins? So how many runs have the Marlins scored
Marlins have scored 106 and given up 127.
So they've scored 106. How many teams in their own division, the National League East, have more runs than they do?
The Philadelphia Phillies at 111. That's it.
So they've scored more runs than the Mets. They've
By-
scored
by
more.
one run.
They've scored more runs than the Nationals and the Braves. Right? It's amazing. Like they've scored more runs than the Padres. The Marlins have scored more runs than the Padres have scored. And you start to look at some of this and you go, they've scored more runs than the Rangers. They've scored more runs than the Astros. They've scored more runs than almost they've scored more runs than the Blue Jays. They've scored more runs than the Orioles. And you're talking about the Miami Marlins, for God's sakes. So I sit there and I go, you gotta find a way to utilize some of that stuff. And I get it. Alcantara hasn't been that great. Meyer's been really good for them as a pitcher. But, that used to be the thing. It used to be, they'd go out and throw out a guy every day that would go out every fifth day and he'd be the starting pitcher and he'd give up 2 runs and they'd lose, 2-0, 2-1. Well, now they go out and score all these runs and they can't keep anybody from scoring against them. They all the pitchers give up all the runs. So it's kind of funny to watch how teams work and how they operate and where they're changing to. But I'm surprised at how they score runs, the Miami Marlins, for God's sakes.
As we started the show with the Guardians and how lucky they are, and it was last year death by 10,000 paper cuts, and I've been not a benefactor of these Miami Marlins. They used to load the bases, no outs, couldn't score. They can get guys on base and couldn't score, Scott, but this year they're finding ways to score.
They're getting them in, and it's just somebody said something. Starting pitchers are reliable over under first 5. What is a major focus? Starting pitchers are reliable. The over under first 5. What is a major focus? So are they talking about totals in the first 5 innings and what to look at for starting pitchers? Is that what they're asking?
Starting pitchers are reliable. The over under first 5. What is a major focus? Let me just start with this underdog sports picks.
You need great starters to bet it says.
Your numbers are predicated on the starting pitching. I do a lot of work. If you like a big favorite in a game, let's just say it is Paul Skeens versus Scott Webb. Well, I can't lay the minus 240. What is the first 5 minus the hook? Is it even money? Is it minus 120? Then we throw out. We don't have to worry about the bridges. We don't have to worry about the back ends. So again, what is the first half over under? Is it 5? Is it 5.5? Is it 3.5? Like I'll pull up right now. Scott was talking about Skeens and Yamamoto. And the funny thing is the full game on Skeens and Yamamoto tonight
should be 7.
Is a flat 7 juiced under 15 cents. The first 5 under over for that game is 3.5 juiced over minus 10 or under. So now take a look at their team totals. Pittsburgh 1.5 juiced under minus 160. The Dodgers 1.5 juiced over minus 140. So they're trying to give you carrots. They think there's a good possibility that after 5 minutes of play, Dodgers are going to be leading 2-1 here, Scotty.
Yeah, I think that says I grab the alternative usually on a 3.5 if you grab 5.5. Well, I think everybody has their own unique way of how they want to look at different things, and first fives, Jeff. You and I used to do this 8-10 years ago when we were on these shows. we discovered the first fives and we're betting first fives and, and stuff, 8-10 years ago. I think the biggest issues that you run into with first fives is inconsistency of offense creates a problem for you. So what does that mean? Well, that means, the Phillies can score runs, right? But they score runs in bunches. They don't score runs like one here, one there, one. They score 3 runs and then they'll score nothing. And then they'll score 3 more and they win 6-0. And they scored in the 7th and the 8th inning, right? That's kind of how it works. And then all of a sudden you bet on the Phillies to cover a first 5 when you bet on Wheeler or something and you got nothing. You didn't win. But so you have to be, I think, and then he was talking about totals. I think there's some looking at totals in the first fives and in the full games. But I don't think that handicappers and people that are breaking down these games do a bullpen analysis. I don't think they do. I think they sit there and go, well, that bullpen's good, or that bullpen's bad, or that bullpen's this, or that bullpen's that. So my thoughts is that if you're betting totals, so you're betting it based on all the work that you do on the starting pitcher, that's fine because everybody does a pile of work on that, right? So I think they look at that and they go, okay, well, that's great, blah, 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 such and such is this kind of pitcher, that kind of pitcher. Well, you have to match that up to the offense they're facing. If you got a strikeout pitcher on the mound and the team that they face don't strike out very much, which is kind of rare, but it does happen, then balls are going to be in play. And if balls are in play, you're going to have more of a chance for an over than you are an under. So how many balls get put in play is way more important than, and I should say this, the balls that get put in play create opportunities for runs because you're going to have a decent amount of walks in the league anymore. So if you have walks, balls put in play, and then you also have the idea that things are going to get hits, right? Then you're going to get runs. And if you get runs, that matchup has to be, you need to find a ground ball pitcher, a guy that then has a hard hit rate that's very low and a good ground ball rate. So you need to be able to kind of take your pitcher matchup and then look at it to the hitter. For example, I was watching a game and I don't remember which game it was off the top of my head. I wish I knew. But they were talking about how velocity was a problem for the team there. I think it was the Phillies. And there's Mets and the Phillies, I think is what it was. And I think the Philly hitters were having struggles trying to hit fastballs that were thrown, chest high or high fastballs. Well, if your starting pitcher does that and they can't hit that, then that's a matchup advantage for your pitcher that isn't really necessarily baked into these numbers. These numbers are baked out of, okay, well, we created this number at 7. Well, split the 2, it's 3.5. Well, sometimes they juice it up a little bit, they juice it down a little bit, or they make it, 3 because all the starting pitchers are going to go. And how many innings is your pitcher going to pitch, right? So I don't think there's a caveat to being able to sit there and go, there's a specialized formula to how to do it, other than you really need to look at the matchup and see what your pitcher can do to offset what the offense can do, or how your offense can take advantage of a pitcher, right? And so my thoughts are like tonight with Skeens and Yamamoto. Yamamoto can throw 17 pitches and he can get Pirates out. Well, the Pirates can hit. Well, they'll find one that he can't hit, and he'll throw that. And then Skeens right now with the way the matchup works, the Dodgers aren't hitting. So when you got Betts and Ohtani going up there striking out all the time, I think that you're going to be in your situation that says, okay, walks, balls in play, ground balls, pitcher. I'm also watching the recent team trends, but I don't go as deep as you're talking about. No, I get it. And I'm not trying to pick on anybody. That's not what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to do is try to say it in a way that when you're gambling on these games and you really want to look at totals and you want to know if a game's going to go under or over a number, especially in the first 5 innings, that's going to be your best matchup to find, because your pitcher, you have data. So and I'm not going to go deep into this, Jeff, just because I don't want people to be like tuning me out, right? But I have all these data points, and one of the data points that I use is going to be hard hit rate, ground ball rate, home run rate, right? So if and strikeout rate, all important. So if you've got a guy that's a big strikeout guy, and you've got a team that's a big strikeout team, it's going to be hard for them to get on base. He's going to do fine. But if he's also a soft contact guy and a ground ball guy, it's really going to be tough. Well, that's what the good pitchers do. So, your good pitchers, Skeens, for example, hard hit rates 27.7. It's the best 25% of all of baseball, right? It's great. His ground ball rates 56%, 25%, best of all of baseball. His whip rates 0.8, batting average against 186. What I also think you have to look at is, what is the pitcher's expected weighted on base percentage, not batting average, expected weighted on base percentage, because that entails slugging, that entails walks, that entails a lot of different things. Entails a double is worth more, a triple is worth more than a single, that kind of stuff. And he's a 2-1-2. So batting average wise, you're looking at 300 is a great average. Well, today 230 is the major league batting average. So if you're a 2-1-2 on expected WOBA, weighted on base, which includes walks and all the shit, that is an awesome, phenomenal number. And Yamamoto's 2.40. It's hard to get on base with those guys because they don't walk anybody and they strike them all out and they get all this soft contact. And matchups are important, but when you have the Pirates hitting, Yamamoto's a great pitcher that can offset that. The Dodgers aren't hitting. Skeens can take advantage of that. It's going to be really hard to get any runs. I know the wind's blowing out like 7 miles an hour there or whatever tonight, but it's going to be tough. And they're both ground ball pitchers, so they keep the ball on the ground. Just tough.
Well, I want to give a shout out to Mr. Bucket, The Rock, Jay Berry, of course, Underdog Sports Picks, Saint TZX, D Release 93, and I'll close with this. When, as you said, we've been here now 10 years. No one was talking team totals. No one was talking first fives. Go back those 10 years, replay those tapes, okay? I'm not saying we're the originator, but we're close to the originators. And the key to success in a first five wager, in my opinion, and I'll thank you, Underdog Sports Picks. And what I will go back to 10 years ago, Scotty, and the thought process was, how many of these teams can get to flip the lineup to the third time? Mm-hmm. They get through, the top of the order gets through, obviously, in the first inning. You hope to get there in the third inning. Can you get to the top of the order in the fifth inning was always the keys to success in a first five battle.
Yeah, I'm not so sure it hasn't changed just a slight bit. I think that if you got your guys up there in the fifth inning 3 times, you're in pretty good shape. But I think what runs, especially if you bet an over or something, or if you bet on a team to beat the other team by half a run or whatever it is, your team's doing well on offense. But I think what happens is baseball's changed. In the 8 years and 10 years we've been doing this, it used to be get a guy on, get him over, find a way to get him in, right? I mean, that's what it used to be. And guys didn't throw 100 miles an hour, every person out there on the mound, and get, 18 inches of break on a slider and stuff like that. Stuff didn't happen back then. So it was a different realm, but those kind of philosophies haven't changed. If you can get those guys up that many times, think about that. If your guy's batting for the third time in the fifth inning, he's probably going to bat 5 times for the whole game. There's going to be a ton of that. It says, and how are they doing? Sometimes when I watch the first three to see how they're doing the first and second time up, and then bet the under 5. So it's one of those. It's one of these spots where you can do a ton of work, and most people do on the pitcher, starting pitcher. If you don't do a ton of work on the bullpen, then like my opinion is like that Pittsburgh and LA game I was talking about. You can't handicap that game as an under if you don't do the bullpen. You can't. And the way I looked at that was when I started looking at that game and looking at the bullpens. So there's two things that bullpens, I think, are separating themselves apart. That when you start to break them down, nobody looks at, because they here's where they go. They go, well, let's sort them by earned run average, or let's sort them by xFIP or something that's their favorite, number. And they go, oh, these are pretty good. These are pretty good. Well, here's what you really want to do. You really want to know left on base percentage, because that's what a bullpen's supposed to do. Sort them by left on base percentage. You don't need to know the left on base percentage. What you need to know is how they rank amongst their peers. So you want the best one and the worst one, and then kind of know, okay, that's pretty good. These guys are really good at not letting these guys score runs. These guys are bad about that. So that's number one, right? Left on base percentage. You also want to know WPA. WPA is win percent added. So WPA means that when they're put into the position of trying to get an out, they get it, or they don't, and it creates a bad play or a bad result, and the runs come. So WPA is important. And again, it's kind of where they rank, not necessarily the number, because I don't think they'll know what to do with the number anyway. So because it's the way the number looks, it's not like an earned run average. If I pull it up, I'll tell you, it's like the Phillies are WPA minus 0.70. And that's the other part. How do you go look at the full year for the bullpen? I don't. I only look at the last 14 days. I don't care what they did already March 27th. They got a whole different group of guys in there probably by now. I mean, there's so many guys that switch and change and move, and some guys have good days, some guys have bad days. You got to know that, and then you need to know, whip rate, guys on base, that kind of stuff, and you have to know how they do in clutch spots. And Fangraphs has that information. And if you start looking at bullpens, you'll start grading them. And then the last part of that is, are the good guys available to pitch today, or are the bad ones going to pitch today? Because if the bad ones are going to pitch today, there's going to be people scoring runs on the bullpen. It doesn't matter. It's going to happen. They're not good, those pitchers.
Monday morning, 10:30. Come catch us. Weekend recap. We'll talk about the National League breakdown, where we are after this weekend, about 30 games. We'll take a look at the Monday slate. We'll get ahead for the series ahead there. NFL draft tonight. Enjoy it. Rounds 2 and 3. Guys, don't get caught up in the quicksand, all the BS, the manipulations by these sports books. Where does Shador go? Who the hell cares? Is it Cleveland? They got 2 picks in the first 4. Just let it be. Enjoy that. We got baseball, NBA, NHL playoffs. Have a great weekend. Behave yourselves. From myself, Jeff Dawson at EC Sports Investor, one and only Scottie Webb at Webby20 MLB. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you back next week. Stay tuned.